Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison LaGrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. US-Russia talks in Riyadh end without a breakthrough, with Moscow seeking the United Nations and a few other countries as potential future participants in the dialogue to end the war in Ukraine. A lawsuit filed by the families of victims of the October 7 Hamas attack accuses American activist groups of having prior knowledge of the militant rampage, which killed around 1,200 people and triggered the war in Gaza. Japan's Unification Church has been stripped of its official recognition after an investigation named one of its disciples an accused in former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's 2022 assassination case. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa denies Elon Musk's claim of white persecution, calls it a completely false narrative after Musk accused Pretoria of promoting the killings of white citizens. And the Australian government unveils unexpected tax cuts and energy rebates ahead of national elections in May as Prime Minister Anthony Albanese seeks a second term in office. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from the United Nations, where India delivered yet another diplomatic drubbing to Pakistan, which New Delhi's terror-exporting neighbour did not see coming. Now, India slammed Pakistan for its repeated references to Jammu and Kashmir at a United Nations debate on peacekeeping reforms. In response to Pakistan's widely denounced references, India called out Pakistan's tactic to distract, distort and derail the UN discussions. Indian permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador P. Harish, called Pakistani remarks unwarranted, parochial and divisive. Indian ambassador repeated New Delhi's stated position on Jammu and Kashmir and added that Pakistan must vacate parts of Jammu and Kashmir under its illegal occupation. The Indian representative added that Pakistan's references to Jammu and Kashmir do not justify its state-sponsored cross-border terrorism.
India is compelled to note that the delegate of Pakistan has yet again resorted to unwarranted remarks on the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Such repeated references neither validate their illegal claims nor justify their state-sponsored cross-border terrorism. Jammu and Kashmir was, is, and will always be an integral part of India. Pakistan continues to illegally occupy the territory of Jammu and Kashmir, which it must vacate. We would advise Pakistan not to try to divert the attention of this forum to drive their parochial and divisive agenda. India will refrain from exercising a more elaborate right of reply.
As India refrained from exercising a more elaborate right of reply, it is critical to note that Pakistan often brings up Jammu and Kashmir even in unrelated UN debates. Islamabad's mention of Jammu and Kashmir during the debate on UN peacekeeping missions is the latest among many such instances. Now, even as Pakistan attempted to distract the UN discussions away from its peacekeeping agenda, India called for consensus to re-evaluate global peacekeeping infrastructure. India said that peacekeeping missions must be adequately funded and resourced. New Delhi added that perpetrators of crimes against peacekeepers must be brought to justice. At the same time, the use of advanced surveillance must be integrated into peacekeeping operations. India also pointed out that peacekeeping cannot be the sole solution to conflicts, and that peace holds when peacekeeping operations are accompanied by political solutions. At the same time, India also offered courses to peacekeeping forces worldwide at the New Delhi-based Center for UN Peacekeeping to keep up with the evolving complexities of maintaining peace in conflict zones. Emphasizing the role of women peacekeepers in conflict zones, India highlighted its stewardship of the first ever conference for women peacekeepers from the Global South last month. The Indian ambassador said, and I quote, "It is no longer a question of whether women can do peacekeeping. Rather, it is about whether peacekeeping can do without women." While India pushes for peacekeeping reforms, modernization, better funding, and integral role of women peacekeepers, Pakistan is busy propagating lies against India. India's response made it clear that the UN is not Pakistan's propaganda stage. Islamabad can keep obstructing key UN debates with its denounced Kashmir chorus, and the world will continue to receive it for what it is: background noise stuck in terror-infested irrelevance. From one country provoking India to another, from Pakistan to Canada now, Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, seems to have taken a leaf out of his predecessor, Justin Trudeau's playbook. Ottawa has once again levelled baseless allegations against India over election interference. In the latest, Canada's spy agency has claimed that India, along with China, are likely to interfere in the upcoming general elections in the country. The Canadian spy agency added that hostile state actors were increasingly leveraging artificial intelligence to meddle in the polls. It further said that India has the quote-unquote intent and capability to interfere in Canadian communities and democratic processes to assert its geopolitical influence. Citing the need for a strong mandate to address challenges posed by US President Donald Trump, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney called for snap elections on the 28th of April. The Canadian spy agency also said that China is highly likely to use AI-enabled tools to attempt to interfere with Canada's democratic process in the current election. It further said that Russia and Pakistan have the potential to conduct foreign interference activities against Canada. Now, this fresh charge by Canada comes amid its already deteriorating ties with India. New Delhi has previously denied allegations of interference by Ottawa. Now, in January, India rejected insinuations levelled by a Canadian Commission report of interference in Canada's elections by certain foreign governments. The report stated that India was suspected of using proxy agents to provide alleged clandestine financial support to candidates from 3 political parties. In a statement, India's Ministry of External Affairs hit back at Canada, saying that it is in fact Canada which has been consistently interfering in India's internal affairs. New Delhi also accused Ottawa of creating an environment for illegal migration and organized criminal activities. Now, this is not the first time that Canada has tried to blame India for its problems. Tensions between India and Canada have hit rock bottom since former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of being involved in the killing of the Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. While addressing the House of Commons, he said that Canadian security agencies had gathered credible evidence linking the Indian government with Nijjar's killing. New Delhi firmly denied these accusations, calling them baseless and absurd, and sought proof to substantiate the claims. However, Ottawa has failed to provide any evidence to back its claims. Tensions further escalated when India expelled 6 Canadian diplomats and recalled its envoy to Ottawa after Canada attempted to question Indian officials as persons of interest in the Nijjar case. India has long accused Canada of seeking electoral gains using pro-Khalistan elements, which are a threat to India's national security. However, Canada has not adequately addressed these concerns so far. Amid the ongoing hostilities, will an anti-India campaign form the basis of Mark Carney's poll campaign for the April 28th election? And moving on to the West Asian country of Turkey, where there seems to be no end to the ongoing protests over the former Istanbul mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu's arrest. Hundreds of students hit the streets of the country's largest city of Istanbul for the sixth straight night of protests. Major clashes broke out between the agitated protesters and the police, days after a Turkish court's ruling over corruption charges against İmamoğlu. Now, the decision has ignited Turkey's biggest protest in over a decade. The protesters in Istanbul gathered in front of the police on the road to Taksim Square, and another crowd demonstrated on the Galata Bridge to block traffic. Crowds were seen chanting anti-government slogans and waving flags. Residents also applauded and banged saucepans in a show of support for İmamoğlu. Protests also broke out in the capital city of Ankara. Riot police were seen dispersing protesters with water cannons as they supported the opposition CHP party's call for continued demonstrations across the country. Now, this came despite a ban on street gatherings in several cities. So far, the police have arrested over 1,000 protesters and supporters of the embattled İmamoğlu since the protests began last week. While on Monday, at least 43 people were detained, including a few journalists, for the Unrest. A strong opposition leader, İmamoğlu, has faced several developments around him in the last 4 days. He went from being the mayor of Istanbul to getting detained, interrogated and jailed. He also lost his mayorship after a probe against him over graft and terror links. Meanwhile, Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan broke his silence on the ongoing political turmoil. He said that the ongoing protests over the jailing of İmamoğlu had turned into a movement of violence. Turkey Premier added that the CHP will be held accountable for the country's injured police officers and also for the damage caused to any property.
Together with our nation, we are following the events that began after a street call by the main opposition leader following a corruption operation centered in Istanbul, which quickly turned into a movement of violence. 123 of our security personnel were injured in 5 days due to attacks by marginal organizations and city bandits.
Erdogan also said that the CHP should stop provoking citizens. He concluded saying that the opposition party's show would soon end and that they would feel shame for the evil they had done to the country.
Like every game played without faith, their show will also end when the curtain closes. At that time, when they look back and if they have the slightest of respect left, I believe they will be ashamed of the evil they have done to the country and the people.
The CHP opposition leader, Özgür Özel, described the anti-government protests as an act of defiance against fascism. He also called for a boycott of pro-government TV channels, particularly those that are not broadcasting images of the protests. Özel also urged people to boycott businesses that were close to the government.
Look, Erdogan, you were saying they would protest on the first day, slow down on the second and forget on the third day. It has been a week and as the young says, this is just the beginning, we will keep fighting.
Meanwhile, the opposition party has also elected İmamoğlu as its candidate for the 2028 presidential election. The party said out of a total of 15 million votes, over 13 million non-party members were in favor of İmamoğlu's nomination as the presidential candidate for 2028. Jailed İmamoğlu is considered to be the strongest rival against President Erdogan. Last year, Erdogan faced his worst electoral defeat in municipal elections, when İmamoğlu's party won in Turkey's major cities and even defeated Erdogan's AK party in former strongholds. Erdogan government's latest actions have been criticized as a politicized attempt to hurt electoral prospects and to silence dissent. With such an unprecedented situation, will the Erdogan-led regime be able to restore the peace? And in our final story, we take you to the Philippines, where uproar is growing over reports that before being arrested on an international criminal court warrant, the former president, Rodrigo Duterte, was denied asylum by the country he once deemed Manila's friend, China. Now, as the report surfaced, Beijing rushed to clarify. China claimed that it did not receive any application for asylum from the former Filipino President Duterte or his family. Speculation on the ex-Filipino leader seeking a safe refuge in China emerged, as it was Hong Kong, a Chinese administrative region where Duterte was staying prior to his arrest. But Beijing claims that Duterte's Hong Kong visit was a quote-unquote a private vacation, and that China never received an asylum request from him. On the 7th of March, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant against Duterte for his war on drugs. Reports in Filipino media claim that President Marcos Jr.'s government planned to put Duterte under custody on the same day. But that day, Duterte flew to Hong Kong to reportedly avoid ICC arrest. Now that's because China is not a party to the Rome Statute, which governs Interpol and the International Criminal Court, meaning that Beijing was not obliged to act on the ICC arrest warrant issued against Duterte. Reports now denied by Beijing say that Duterte's supposed hope that China would save him from ICC arrest even saw initial success. Hong Kong police reportedly refused to cooperate with Interpol when they sought to arrest Duterte in the Chinese-administered city on the 7th of March. But Beijing's cooperation with Duterte to repel the ICC arrest ended just there. Reports say that instead of providing any potential asylum to Duterte, Chinese authorities even escorted the former Filipino president to an airport in Hong Kong to ensure his return to Manila, where on the 11th of March, he was arrested. China and the Philippines shared a period of friendlier ties during Duterte's presidency between 2016 and 2022. This was a departure from the previous Filipino administrations that saw Beijing's expansionism in the West Philippine Sea as a deterrent to a potential bilateral breakthrough. In public records, China has now denied ever receiving an asylum request from Duterte. But the fact remains that despite being a non-signatory to the International Criminal Court, China chose not to use its status to protect Duterte from arrest. The incident has once again underlined the unreliable nature of Beijing's political proximities. It's also a message to the leaders who see themselves as China's friends right now, that when the push comes to shove, instead of looking out and standing up, China may simply choose to turn its back. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and